Well, this is going to be a fun video, isn't it? It's been 1 month since the release of TBC Classic, and with the ever-growing battleground queues for Horde, Blizzard has finally decided to take action. Pretty decisive action at that. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. It's not quite mercenary mode, but as of today and over the weekend, Horde will be able to queue against Horde in Battlegrounds. Let's talk about it. So first things first, let's have a quick little read over the patch notes just so we're all on the same page with what exactly they're doing and for how long. They're saying what was most evident from all of the feedback was players want to continue playing on their chosen side of the faction, players don't want to wait for a long time for Battlegrounds, and players don't want a highly convoluted mechanism for getting into those Battlegrounds. To solve those issues, they're testing basically Horde v Horde or Alliance v Alliance. It won't be mercenary mode where you're matched with the underrepresented faction, it'll just be straight up same faction battlegrounds. So starting today, when the video goes out, we'll be enabling same faction battlegrounds. You'll queue for your battleground as normal. The matchmaker will try and make an opposite faction match for you. If they can't, you'll be matched against a team from your own faction. Rewards will be as usual. They think of these as military training exercises and won't get that feeling across in game by using masks and tabards on the team playing out from the enemy base. This won't be available for Alterac Valley as that was never made to accommodate war games, which I think makes sense. If Horde ran straight down from the north all the way to Drekthar and said, hey, we have to kill you because it's the honourable thing to do, that doesn't quite make sense. They'll be following how this goes over the weekend, and with scheduled maintenance at the start of next week, they will return it to how it was previously. So that's a pretty big change. The first thing I thought when I read that is, well, I hope you've got your AV marks done, because as soon as this goes in, that battleground queue is going to go up enormously for both sides of the factions. But if you don't have your AV marks now, I would consider getting them when they return the matchmaking to normal, because outside of holiday weekends, it's probably going to be even longer than it is at the moment, especially for Alliance. So I guess the first thing to do is get all the rage out of the way. I don't care about any of the Alliance deserve this because of that, Horde deserve X because of Y, or any of the faction-based arguments that people are flying around. In fact, the actual implications in terms of PvP are also secondary for me. What I care about is the faction balance. Now, the battleground queues are an issue for the Horde. One area of the game being locked completely behind over an hour-long queue is not a good thing for the game, and this was not going to go away unless Blizzard intervened in some kind of format. Saying that, it's kind of hard not to be at least a little bit salty about how AV was left throughout the duration of Classic, where initially Alliance found ways to pre-made, then Blizzard removed the battleground number, then they started sending scouts in, and then Blizzard put a random delay on the start of the battleground, and eventually it just turned into Horde having an overwhelmingly large win rate. I have anecdotal experience of it myself with my 4% win rate over 172 games. Now, you could get into the battleground and play, in quotation marks, the game there, but as for the map and how playable it was, I'm not so sure on that one. I do like the idea about the faction v faction being military training scenarios though. This is definitely better than war mode, though I think having masks on the opposite faction might look a little bit silly. You see camps of NPCs training all over Azeroth and they don't feel the need to don masks. Tabards make sense though. Maybe something like Castle Wars from RuneScape where they have a hood and a cloak override. That should be enough to differentiate the two out. Also, since it's a military training exercise, they should probably just knock each other unconscious. I don't think killing each other makes much sense when they're meant to be doing a practice session. Saying all this though, I think you need to be really careful when you're making changes which can negatively impact the already slanted faction balance even more. And we're seeing a strong trend with more and more people re-rolling to Horde, and this will more or less only add to it if it goes in this format. And I've seen people talk about Seal of Blood as an example of a change which overly benefits one faction, as if to say, well, you got this, so now we get that, when in fact that's a good example of an active change which benefits faction balance. Not only do Horde get Seal of Vengeance, which is relevant for tanking, it's not as good as Seal of Blood comparatively, but on top of that, Horde are expected to be the more populous faction come TBC because of them getting Paladins and them having overall better ratios for more areas of the game. This gave Alliance Paladins an incentive to actually stay on that faction rather than re-rolling if they're competitive about their performance on that particular class. And the damage the class puts out compared to Warlocks or Hunters is completely irrelevant. People compete within their own class. You don't need to be the top of the leaderboard to do that. And I do think no changes is well behind us now, but I do believe there's such a thing as a good change. And I'd rather see things be made different to try and resolve some of the issues that can be anticipated in the game. And so far in TBC, I think Blizzard have actually been doing a pretty good job at doing that. I know crazy opinions saying Blizzard good. You're not allowed to do that here, are you? This is why feedback matters. Look at the changes they had on drums, where they added the tinnitus debuff so people didn't feel obligated to stack leatherworking, or when they were planning to merge the Oceanic Realm battle group with the rest of North America, which would have just resulted in horribly laggy battlegrounds and arenas for both parties. I don't know what it is about WoW, but we've got some real doomer vibes from some people who just can't seem to leave the game, but also can't stop saying how bad it is. Nobody's forcing you to be here, you know. But in terms of the change they're proposing here, this should really be the last ditch effort if absolutely nothing else works. As I've mentioned previously, I'd like to see them try and encourage Alliance to do Battlegrounds more, give them more honor, more tokens. Saying the situation's bad, so who cares if it gets even worse, is frankly just a cop-out and not something you should do, and this is kind of what this feels like. Again, I don't think the Horde should have Battleground queues that are over hours long, and they should be able to play the game at the end of the day. But I don't think this is the direction you should take as a first course of action, in my opinion at least. We've seen what happens over time in retail when faction balance goes unaddressed for too long. This kind of change would lead us to that even faster than we're already going there. What will happen is people will want to go to a faction because they are perceived as better, even if they aren't always better. The majority of PvP servers will start to become dominated by one side. This is currently trending heavily towards the Horde if we look at the population changes between the end of Classic and where we are at the moment. Alliance players start to leave PvP servers because they're just having a difficult time playing the game at peak times, which is when most people play. It's harder questing, there starts to become less groups, less people to run things with, you can't access summoning stones, and people gradually leave. The character boost also exists for an easy reroll at the moment. The quote-unquote better faction keeps getting more and more players, especially when the content becomes harder or more competitively driven, which people are extremely into this mindset in Classic. It'll begin with those types of players, and then eventually it'll be the friends, it'll be the families, it'll be the more casual people, and the scales will really start to tip. Eventually you have a higher population faction with more players, more competitive players, more active world, better economies, more groups going, more people out questing, and it eventually becomes just an overall more rounded MMO experience. And this is the long term for the game. It is a long way off happening, but we've been down this road before. So let me know your thoughts on it, obviously with videos like this. And this is kind of the funny thing about doing videos for Classic is you already know about 50%, or well, more than 50% of the people now are already likely to be predisposed to a certain opinion, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to say what they think, but hopefully we can keep it about the game as a whole rather than X faction bad because I play the other faction. So try and keep it civil. That's about it though, guys. As always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.